Yeah, I think if the ends justify the means, then I think that's not ideal. I mean, it's funny. The best way to put it is the great French writer Balzac said that behind every great fortune there's a great crime, and Warren Buffett said, the great French writer Balzac said, behind every great fortune there's a great crime except for Berkshire Hathaway. I don't think Balzac ever wrote that. But the idea that there's this altruistic, perfect capitalist is, I think, a fallacy. I actually learned how to raise prices from Warren Buffett. And that's a long, crazy story. But Buffett has always prized price increases as a great method for value creation. And in any event, I think that if you look at Rockefeller and the other robber barons, the Carnegies, etc., there's a reason we have Carnegie Hall. There's a reason we have Rockefeller Center. These are men that understood that being a capitalist is a necessarily Darwinian game that is often zero-sum game, where there will be a winner and there will be a loser. And your job is to be the winner. And there'll be a lot of kind of collateral damage. But if you live your life in a virtuous way, and it's interesting, Rockefeller was this devoutly religious. Yeah, I mean, I have some ideas, right? I mean, I'm from a small country called Albania, and the only famous person we've ever had from our country now, unfortunately, is me. But before me is this woman named Mother Theresa. John Belushi. Yeah, there's definitely a handful of others. Some singers now that are from Albania. And so a lot of us are some semi-Italian and semi-Albanian. And I joke that we're poor man's Italian. The point is, Mother Teresa was an inspiration for pretty much anyone from Albania, because she was our real, it's what we held up as our kind of paragon of famous Albanian, successful Albanian, and of course, one of the most virtuistic people ever, theoretically. Some people hate Mother Teresa for all things. Christopher Hitchens thought she was terrible. I think that, her life story captivated me. The idea that she had no worldly possessions, I thought, was a most amazing thing. And she was something else. And to be an ascetic instead of a hedonist, I think is virtue, is a virtue. And anyone who knows me and has actually spent time with me and seen me work 24/7, not working 24/7, but been with me 24/7, knows that I'm a lot closer to the ascetic than the hedonist. And I think that's reasonable and a good virtue. So pursuit of knowledge, betterment of others, all those things are important virtues. And, I want to do those things. Of course, life sometimes gets in the way. We have temptations and we have demons. Each of us do. But Mother Teresa seemed to have no temptations and no... I mean, I don't like to look back, but if I could somehow go in a time machine, yeah, maybe, it's funny. I would do like 2 or 3 things differently. So, when I started out, I thought naively, somewhat naively, that as a young man, I felt that, that I needed to gain as much wealth as possible to unlock possibilities for myself. And I was probably just half right in that. And I bet pretty big on that. I bet my life on that. And I want to say I was about half right. I got into the hedge fund industry, and I kind of figured I should learn how Wall Street works and learn how to invest and do all those things. And I'm grateful for having done that. But I also, at least for many years, lost the forest for the trees, that at the end of the day, what makes the world go round isn't Wall Street. It's actually the other way around. The great products and great ideas and great American, but also global ingenuity and innovation, that makes the world go round. And Wall Street caters to that, not the other way around. And what I found on Wall Street, which was fascinating, is that there's an infinite amount of money. A good idea or a really passionate innovator is very rare. And you'll find entire buildings of investors that will rally around one person that just seems like a great innovator, like a Elon Musk or whomever. And as a child, I didn't get that. I didn't really get that. And I loved people like Bill Gates and Larry Ellison and people like that. But I still didn't fully appreciate it. And it seemed too distant for me and too lucky for me. So I kind of looked into Wall Street as kind of this middle ground. Yeah, Wall Street was kind of a neutral, safer place for a poor kid like me to land and say, you know, I can call myself a success without sticking my neck out and being a software entrepreneur. Which I gladly would have and probably should have done. Metaphysically, I would have told young Martin to calm down and slow down, that there was no rush to be successful. There's no timing, there's no race, there's just slow down and take it easy, because, you know, doing it right is more important than doing it fast. And I didn't understand that as a child, and sometimes I'm not sure I understand it today. So I would do that differently. Those are a few things. I'm sure I could write a book about things I would do differently, but those are two sort of main concepts. I would have been less Wall Street focused. Yeah, no, I definitely had that in my mind. I mean, nobody starts in business and doesn't fantasize a little bit about, you know, what would great, huge success look like. And unfortunately, there is this... there is reality as well. You know, I was at OHSU, Oregon Health Science University, where Phil Knight, the CEO and founder of Nike, Phil Knight pledged $1 billion or something like that to cure cancer at OHSU. And I have a good relationship with OHSU, and so I went by there and they said, "Oh, what do you think of our Phil Knight thing?" And I said, $1 billion. Gosh, I don't think you could learn the first thing about cancer with $1 billion. And you know, they're all pretty upset when I said that. That's true. You know, it's just that's not enough money. And there's only 400 people on the planet that have $1 billion or more. Some of them have a lot more. But it's... All I'm saying is that I don't think, you know, I think the idea that, oh, let me make a lot of money and then let me give it away, I think it's pretty naive. You know, I think that is what a capitalist says to himself. What's the Chesterton or other Christian guilt? That's a deathbed guilt thing, where they basically say, you know, I spent my life in the pursuit of wealth, and now I want to give it away, and oh, by the way, no matter how much money I give away, I'm not going to change the world. Yeah, and I don't know that that's the most fulfilling thing either. You know, to me, if I had to fantasize about how would I want to be remembered, I'd rather be Pythagoras.
At least Carnegie built libraries with a lot of the money that he gave away, so he's informing the
Carnegie Mellon.
generations to come.
Carnegie Mellon,
Yeah.
the two big families in banking, Carnegie and Mellon, J.P. Morgan,
Yeah.
etc. I mean, but you know, I'd rather be remembered as Pythagoras. You know, Pythagoras, Aristotle. You know, that is no one's gonna remember Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer and Steve Cohen and George Soros and Carl Icahn. We're gonna remember Albert Einstein. We're gonna remember Schopenhauer. We're gonna remember Leonardo da Vinci. We're gonna remember, you know. I don't think anyone who wakes up tomorrow morning and says, I want to be like Aristotle is in their right mind. So, you know, I think the saddest thing about life is just recognizing your own mediocrity and your own limitations and your own sort of pathetic nature, that you're just this beast of a person that is going to grope for understanding and reality and probably fail to achieve it. And, you know, let alone find excellence, you know, and let alone find legendary excellence like Nietzsche or someone saying that.
Don't let the existential dread set in. Don't let it set in.
Look, at the end of the day, you're not Warren Buffett, you're not Niels Bohr, you're not Beethoven, and you just have to live with that and find meaning. Don't find meaning in these insanely impossible to achieve, you know, barriers and instead find meaning in being a good brother and being a good friend. Those are more valuable. I like James because he seems like he could be the best friend someone could ever have. And like, I've seen every business person in the world, I've seen every inventor in the world, but like, he's actually a guy that I look up to, and I barely know him, just because he seems like he could be this really amazing friend. And I know another guy that I ended up suing and hating. I think I was wrong about him, but I always liked him, and I hired him because I thought he was the best dad I've ever met. And these are more important to me than being the best CFO, or being the best high-yield bond investor, or being the best, portfolio manager for a venture capital company. Like, I think these are what we should aspire to be. If you want to be Pythagoras or Aristotle or Socrates, I'm not going to stop you, but I think we have to have pedestrian goals for our lives, because at the end of the day, there is a lot of vanity and a lot of sort of narcissism in saying, I want to be as revolutionary and important and renowned and known as Michelangelo, when at the end of the day, probably you have friends around you in your daily life that are crying for you to just be their friend. And not to be Michelangelo or Superman, but just to be you. And I think that that's the hardest thing we have to do as humans, is to take ourselves off that pedestal, take ourselves out of, needing to be extraordinary, and just be ordinary people is probably the hardest thing to do.
You don't always have to hit the grand slam. You can get the walks, and you still driving a run.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you can be friendless and soulless and then be like the next Harvey Weinstein, like me.
Or who is that crazy aviator? Harvey Hughes? Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes.
Mr. Burns was modeled after him, right?
Really? After Howard Hughes?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. Did you know the guys that made The Simpsons are like PhD scholars, like mathematicians?
No, I didn't know that.
When I was in math club in college, I went to a little math club meeting where we had a lecture on all of the math jokes that are hidden inside of The Simpsons.
Yeah, I'm glad T12 is mentioning HHMI, the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. Is your Howard Hughes scholar, I think. It's just permanently endowed. Unbelievable. I think it's buildingless. It's kind of stateless. It's this like amorphous thing where it's... I met my first HHMI scholar, Steve Dowdy. Steve pioneered these... the way to... macromolecules could potentially enter cells unperturbed. I want to meet T12. But yeah, HHMI is kind of this really unique institute. I'm not sure that HHMI scholars love it. But